Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're talking about Jean Grey because, of course, every video from now on has to include the words J-E-A-N, Jean, and G-R-E-Y, Grey. No, I'm talking about the top 10 worst characters in Marvel Future Fight because I thought it would be funny to follow up, 4 Jean Grey videos in 5, out of 5, out of the last 5, with something completely different. So what's more different than Jean Grey than the absolute shittiest, most dumpster tier, bottom of the barrel, toilet flushed characters? So we're gonna go in and we're gonna talk about why these characters are so bad, why you should avoid them at all costs, and maybe a few words, a few ideas here and there on how to fix them. But first, let's go for honorable mention. Now, these are characters that, for one reason or another, are not in the top 10 list, but they could be under certain circumstances. So, Phil Coulson, actually an amazing support character, but that is literally all he is good for. He is only good for director's orders and the uniform bonuses that his optional uniform provides to other characters. As a standalone character, he might be the worst character in the game. If you do not have a team, if you only have one character to use, and it has to be Phil Coulson, even though he benefits from his own passive, he is so incredibly dogshit. His skills are so bad that he actually might be the single worst standalone character in the game. But because of his tier 2 passive, obviously we cannot put him on this list because he does have a tremendous amount of value for other characters to take advantage of. Additionally, personally, I can see why people would say that characters like Agent 13 and Drax should be on this list of top 10 worst characters in the game. However, a lot of the gauge for how I rank these characters in terms of how bad they are goes towards their performance in Shadowland, because Shadowland is by far the easiest single-player PvE game mode, besides maybe like regular World Boss, and Agent 13 and Drax can both perform well in Shadowland, and I'm talking like they can clear stage 1 consistently if you utilize skill canceling. For Agent 13, you skill cancel 4 into other skills. This skill doesn't go on cooldown, but you get the 2 seconds of immunity. Drax, pretty much the exact same situation. I believe he needs to be tier 2 for this to happen, but you just skill cancel his third skill, Cry for Blood, which triggers his revenge passive, which gives him at tier 2 3 seconds of immunity. So you can do that to keep those two characters alive indefinitely, and being able to survive and slowly chip away at your opponent is something that the rest of these characters don't fucking have, and they're actually even more dog shit for a lot of other reasons. So that's why I don't put Agent 13 and Drax on this list, but they are they would probably be like 11 and 12 if I had a top 12 worst characters in the game. Now, of course, as always, before we jump into the list, this is my personal opinion, so you can disagree with me, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. But here we go, number 10, Hellcat. Now, she has a surprisingly good tier 2 passive, guaranteed dodge, crit rate, wow, or crit damage, but she's just very bad. Her skills have weird sort of movements to them. You can't keep characters locked down in one specific place. She does have a pretty nice iframe on 4, and it's got some nice AoE damage, and it kind of clips the enemy and kind of stun locks them. But she's just a very frustrating character to play, and I've had her at tier 2 for a while, and I've tried to make her work multiple times in Shadowland, but she just doesn't do well. She's got very low base stats, and I have a rank 1000 Hellcat, so I've obviously put, I haven't put CTPs on her, but I put a CTP on her, guys. I put some work into this build, and she's still completely trash. Her damage is super low, and she doesn't even have the crowd control ability to take advantage of anything else. Karnak has very low stats. You see, he's got 15,000 physical attack, even with a mythic uniform, so he's not that far off from her. It's less than 1,000, and he's got a mythic uniform. So if she had a mythic uniform, she would be pretty close. And Karnak's damage is really low too, but he has multiple stuns that he can take advantage of to stun lock opponents. So that's why Hellcat is just so trash. She just doesn't have that. Number 9 is Deathlock. Now, Deathlock does have a leadership. That's the only saving grace for this character. And while he does have a cute tier 2 passive, I'm probably never going to find out how good it is because I imagine it's trash. A 5-guard hit that's on a 7-second cooldown is pretty bad. So you basically have 5 hits to survive for the next 7 seconds. He has 0 iframes. He has 0 skills that kind of guard break or have any sort of stun. So that basically means, where are you going to use him? He's going to get hit before the guard hit goes away. The guard hit's not going to protect him. He has no iframes to protect himself. and he's got no ways to stun or bind or do anything to influence the enemies in Shadowland. So there's literally no game mode you can use him in. Well, you can use him as a leadership. That's why he's not further down this list. If he didn't have the leadership, he might be number 1 because he's just so dog shit. Coming in at number 8, another character who has multiple uniforms and has a good leadership, but besides that is very, very bad. And MODOK is interesting because he kind of has a little sprinkle of everything, you know? He's got some cool immunities. You're like, wow, he's got mind control. It's a 3-second bind. Oh, he's got ignore dodge, but only 10%. He's got a heal. Yeah, it's like a 0.5% heal. He literally has a heal for less than 1% of his HP. And it happens at the very end of this skill, and it takes like 5 seconds to animate. So this is what happens when you give a character 1% of the stats of every character's abilities. It's just a dog shit smorgasbord. It's kind of like going to a buffet and blindly choosing one item from every single bucket and then looking at your plate and being completely unsatisfied. That's MODOK. Just use him for the leadership, nothing else. And of course, you're going to have to eventually, not of course, but you'd want to eventually purchase his uniforms for their optional bonuses, not for the actual uniform itself. No thank you. Coming in number 7, a character that I think a lot of you guys would have put number 1 because of dead memes, and that is Hulkling, as soon as I can find where he is. And now Hulkling is actually not as bad as people say. He does have some saving graces, and I've tried to mention them on the other characters so far. Hulkling does have, you know, better stats. He's got almost 25,000 HP here as a combat type, so he's a bit more defensively minded. He does have an iframe, I believe, on Excelsior, his second skill, which is named after, you know, Stan Lee. And he's got skills that allow him to guard break the enemy. He's also got a 3-second stun on Skydive Swoop, which is a 5-second cooldown. So you basically stun for 3 seconds, use other skills, iframe, and then stun for 3 seconds. So you can use Hulkling on certain stages if you can really combine all of those abilities with max skill cooldown and enough damage. However, he is on this list. I haven't built him up very much. He is on this list ahead of MODOK and Deathlock because he just doesn't have a leadership. So if you can't make him work for himself, he's garbage. He's actually worse than MODOK and Deathlock because they actually can help their teammates, whereas Hulkling cannot. I was gonna say Whiplash. Coming in at number 6, we have Kingpin. And despite having a uniform, despite having summons, despite being a very good character once upon a time, yes, a very good character once upon a time, he's just utterly garbage now. His stats are way too low, his summons die way too quickly, and they just don't do any damage at all, and he's left being able to do nothing. He does have some limited ability to kind of get an enemy into the corner and beat them down because his 4th skill has a stun and it's got an iframe at the beginning, but it's very hard to do this because you have to alternate between getting the summons up and also getting the stun off at the last minute in order to summon the clones again. If they dodge this for whatever reason or it misses, you're screwed. So he basically has a one-trick ability, and he's very just annoying to use, and I have a rank 2000 Kingpin, and I never want to use him in Shadowland because it's a nightmare every single time. He's in dire need of upgrades. He's so incredibly bad, it's not even funny. Coming in at number 5, we have Mockingbird, and despite, like Hellcat, despite having a cool tier 2 passive, 35% guaranteed dodge, she basically has like 1.5 iframes. She doesn't have any damage on her skills. She's got incredibly, cripplingly low physical attack, and because her iframes don't last very long, because she doesn't have very many of them, and because she doesn't have any stuns, what are you going to do? Yeah, you're just going to have to keep playing a Shadowland stage over and over and over and over again with Mockingbird until you get lucky and you dodge enough attacks. And you're probably going to have to build her to have maximum dodge on top of the guaranteed dodge for her to have any chance of survival. She's really bad, and she, again, desperately needs a rework. Coming on to number 4, another speed type character. Of course, you guys were waiting for this one eventually, Fandral. Now, I, curiously had dubbed Fandral the #1 worst character maybe about a year ago because I really thought he was super bad, but upon playing with him at tier 2, he's not as bad as that. It's not very far away, the worst character in the game versus the 4th worst character. There's not a huge gap there, but Fandral can do things in limited situations. He's got, defensive tier 2, he's got offensive 4-star passive, he's got Fandral's formation, and while Fandral's formation summons 2 combat types who generally don't help him when he's fighting blast characters in a speed stage for Shadowland. They can at least absorb some of the damage and stall long enough so that he can use Dancing Blade and some of his other attacks that can actually guard break lock characters in limited situations. And I believe there's like a hidden stun at the end of one of these skills that also helps him do something. But that's something that he's doing is very, very little. So I would not bank on anything spectacular from Fandral. And I honestly don't think he's ever going to get a rework. He's just that bad. Coming in at number 3 is a character that's been recognized by Netmarble as being complete trash in 2 different vote for this character to get reworked polls in 2018 and now 2019. We have Miss Jessica Jones, and her 3rd season of her Netflix series, which is going to be canceled as soon as it's done airing, is about to air because of Disney Plus. And I don't know, Jessica Jones has never received a uniform despite having 3 seasons in 3 consecutive years on Netflix, or whatever, 5 consecutive years. I don't know how long it takes in between seasons. I don't really care. I don't even watch Jessica Jones that carefully. I kind of put it on in the background while I'm doing something else. But she's a much better character in the comics than she's shown as, you know, either in the TV show and especially in this game. The only thing, there's 2 things. The only 2 things that Jessica Jones has going for her is her leadership, which is actually quite good for Alliance Conquest, and it can be good in some situations for Shadowland, and the fact that she is 100% immune to Emma Frost. It's very cute, but it's going to be useless 99.9% of the time. That's right. And so, yeah, because of that, there's just really, it's painful to use Jessica Jones. It's honestly painful. Coming in at number 2, another combat type. The top 3 are almost all dominated by combat types. We have Blade, and despite having a uniform, Blade is just that bad. He's just a worse version of Deathlock. Whereas Deathlock has a leadership that's good. Blade's leadership, it looks good. Wow, you get to absorb HP, you get to recover HP based on damage dealt. That's called Life Leech. It's something that Netmarble, you know, created in 2015 and then just completely forgot about for the next 4 years. It's almost like this is a staple skill and a staple ability in pretty much every other RPG, ARPG, JRPG, SRPG, and MMORPG except for Marvel Future Fight. Even MCOC, which is a fucking fighting game, has Life Leech. Strike Force has Life Leech, and it's a turn-based game. But of course, the ARPG game, which you would argue the genre, you know, pretty much defined Life Leech, doesn't have it on any other character. But sure, Blade has it, and it's completely garbage. Why? Because there's a 15-second cooldown. How does the Life Leech go away? What do you mean? Anyways, I don't want to get too angry here. Blade's really bad, no iframes. He has 1 skill with damage, which is Hemorrhage, and you will be hemorrhaging when you actually try to use him because he's that bad. And he has a skill that does no damage, which is super exciting. Because on top of having 5 low damage skills, why not just take one of those away? Awesome. So yeah, please Netmarble, if you want to do something for my birthday next year, make Life Leech the feature of the next 2 updates. Brand new characters that have Life Leech mechanic, make that a mechanic that we can use to try and counter some of the characters in the game. I think Life Leech is a really cool ability, and it's not being utilized at all in this game, and it really should be. Coming in at number 1, a character that I personally tried to give a CTP of Rage to, and I discovered that even with an OP CTP, he is still POO, which is my joke for swapping OP and then adding a 0. Mr. Daredevil, he takes the cake from me as the number 1 worst character in the game. Super low damage, super low survivability, pretty much completely helpless. I feel bad picking on him because he's blind, but you know what? If you read the comics, he's not really blind, and Matt Murdock deserves a lot more. And despite the fact that I've got a legendary uniform, despite the fact that he's gotten 2 uniforms, he still remains arguably one of the worst characters in the game, and my personal worst based on my experiences. So with that being said, I have to go puke. Let me know what you guys think of this nightmare of carousel characters. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.